The gentle chime of the bell echoed through the lavish bridal boutique as Jasmine Carter stepped inside, her heart swelling with excitement. The warm glow of golden chandeliers reflected off pristine white walls, lined with breathtaking wedding gowns. Each dress seemed to whisper promises of a fairy tale wedding, shimmering under the soft lighting like something out of a dream. For Jasmine, this moment had been years in the making. Ever since she was a little girl, she had imagined the day she would find the perfect dress, the one she would wear when she walked down the aisle toward the man of her dreams. And now, after months of planning, sketching, and careful decisions, that moment was finally here. She had already placed a deposit on a custom-designed gown, a masterpiece that embodied her vision of elegance and grace. All that was left was to see it in person and try it on. She walked toward the front counter where a tall woman with sleek blonde hair sat scrolling through her phone. Her name tag read Heather Caldwell. The woman didn't acknowledge Jasmine's presence at first, too engrossed in whatever was on her screen. Jasmine hesitated, then cleared her throat softly. "Hi, I'm here to pick up my wedding dress. It was a custom order. Jasmine Carter." Heather's gaze flickered up, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took in Jasmine's appearance. There was something unreadable in her expression, something cold. Slowly, she put her phone down and let out a breath, as though the simple request was an inconvenience. "What?" she asked, her tone laced with disinterest. Jasmine repeated herself, forcing a polite smile. "I ordered a custom dress a few months ago. It was supposed to be ready today. The name is Jasmine Carter." Heather sighed dramatically before turning to the computer. Her fingers tapped lazily against the keyboard as she pulled up the order. She stared at the screen for a few moments before raising an eyebrow. "Oh, that one." Her lips curled slightly, almost in amusement. "Wait here." Jasmine watched as Heather disappeared into the back of the store. She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the odd feeling creeping up her spine. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe Heather was just having a bad day. But when Heather returned, she wasn't alone. Another saleswoman, a petite redhead with a sharp expression, followed closely behind, holding Jasmine's dress in her hands. Jasmine's heart leaped at the sight of it. The delicate lace, the intricate beadwork, the way the fabric shimmered under the boutique's lighting. It was exactly how she had envisioned it. But something was off. The two women exchanged glances before Heather spoke again, her voice casual but with an undeniable edge. "There's been a change," she said, her lips curling into a condescending smile. Jasmine frowned. "A change?" "Yes," the redhead chimed in, crossing her arms. "Due to adjustments in our pricing structure, there's been a slight increase in the cost of your gown." Jasmine's stomach dropped. "Increase? How much?" Heather turned the computer screen toward Jasmine, and her breath caught in her throat. The price had nearly doubled. "That's not possible," Jasmine said, shaking her head. "I signed a contract. I already put down a deposit. You can't just raise the price." Heather let out a small, almost pitying laugh. "Actually, we can. If you read the fine print, you'd see that prices are subject to change based on demand and material costs." Jasmine felt her fingers curl into fists. She knew what this was. She had seen this kind of treatment before. Subtle, yet sharp enough to cut deep. She straightened her shoulders. "I want to speak to the manager." Heather's smile faltered slightly before she recovered. "I am the manager." "Then I want to speak to the owner," Jasmine said firmly. Heather's expression darkened. The redhead beside her scoffed. "You think the owner has time to deal with every little complaint?" The unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Jasmine knew exactly what they meant. Every little complaint. People like you. Jasmine refused to back down. "I have a contract. I won't pay a penny more than what we agreed on." Heather sighed, rubbing her temples dramatically before leaning forward on the counter. "Look, sweetheart, we have very exclusive clientele here. We have standards. If you can't afford it, maybe this just isn't the place for you." Jasmine's pulse pounded in her ears. Anger burned in her chest, but she kept her voice calm and steady. I can afford it just fine. What I can't afford is to be scammed. Heather's smile dropped completely now, her blue eyes turning icy. Well, if you don't like it, you can take your business elsewhere. Jasmine opened her mouth to argue. But before she could speak, the redhead lifted the dress and held it just out of reach. And since you clearly have an attitude, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Jasmine froze. Excuse me, you heard me, Heather said, her voice like steel. We don't need your kind causing problems. Jasmine's entire body went rigid. The air felt heavy, suffocating. A cold rage settled deep in her bones, but she refused to let them see her break. She took a slow step back, her voice steady. You're making a mistake. Heather smirked. I don't think so. Jasmine turned on her heel and strode toward the door, forcing herself to keep her head high even as humiliation clawed at her insides. She pushed through the glass doors and stepped onto the sidewalk, inhaling deeply. She wasn't done. Not even close. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and dialed the one person she knew would handle this without hesitation. The call barely rang twice before a deep, familiar voice answered. Baby, what's wrong? Jasmine exhaled, her grip tightening around the phone. They just tried to scam me out of my dress, she said, her voice trembling with restrained fury. And then they kicked me out. Silence. Then, a quiet, deadly calm response. Where are you? Jasmine turned back toward the boutique, her jaw clenched. Still outside the store. I'm on my way. Jasmine didn't need to say anything else. She could hear it in his voice. Her fiancé, Dinder Parker, was already in motion. Heather and her staff had no idea what was coming. They had messed with the wrong woman. Jasmine stood outside the boutique, the cool afternoon breeze doing little to soothe the fire burning inside her. She was livid, not just because of the blatant disrespect she had faced, but because she had expected this kind of treatment the moment she stepped through those doors. She had hoped, naively perhaps, that things would be different, that the money she had spent, the contract she had signed, and the excitement she had carried in her heart would be enough to protect her from the ugly reality of discrimination. But no, even here, in one of the most exclusive bridal boutiques in the city, they saw her as less than someone they could push aside, cheat, humiliate. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. No, she wasn't going to let them win. She wouldn't let them ruin this moment for her. The sound of an approaching engine broke through her thoughts. She turned just as a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, its tires coming to a smooth halt. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Dinder Parker, a man who commanded attention without saying a word. Standing at 6'3", built like an athlete, and dressed in a tailored navy suit that fit him like a second skin, Dinder moved with a quiet confidence that made people take notice. His deep brown eyes scanned Jasmine's face immediately, assessing her emotions with a sharpness that only came from years of protecting the people he loved. Jasmine didn't realize how much tension she had been holding in her shoulders until he was standing in front of her. What happened? His voice was low, calm, but she could hear the edge underneath it, the same edge that made men twice his size think twice before stepping out of line. Jasmine let out a breath. They tried to raise the price of my dress, even though I already put down a deposit. When I called them out on it, they told me to leave. Heather, the so-called manager, basically told me I didn't belong here. Dinder's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening. He didn't say anything right away, but Jasmine could feel the energy shift around him. Who's Heather? He finally asked. Jasmine turned slightly, gesturing toward the boutique. Through the large glass windows, Heather and the redhead were standing near the counter, laughing about something, probably her. That's her, Jasmine said, folding her arms. The one with the perfect blonde ponytail and the superiority complex. Dinder followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, He started walking toward the boutique. Jasmine blinked. Wait. D-end. Too late. The boutique's door swung open, the bell chiming sweetly, too sweetly for the storm that had just entered the building. Heather looked up, her smirk faltering slightly as Dander strode in. His presence was impossible to ignore, towering, intense, and completely unimpressed. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice still carrying that same forced politeness she had used with Jasmine earlier. Dander's eyes didn't waver. "You just kicked my fiancé out of this store." Heather's lips twitched. "Oh." She glanced at Jasmine through the window, then looked back at Dander with an exaggerated sigh. "I see. Look, sir, we run an exclusive business here. Not everyone can meet our standards." Dander's expression didn't change, but something about his stillness was unnerving. "What standards?" His voice was so calm that it felt like a warning. Heather lifted her chin. "Elegance. Class. Sophistication." The redhead next to her snickered under her breath. Jasmine, watching from outside, felt her stomach twist. She knew exactly what they meant. Dander, however, remained unfazed. If anything, he seemed amused. "Right," he said, nodding slowly. "And yet my fiancée, who, by the way, already PA'd for her dress, isn't good enough for your standards." Heather's fake smile tightened. "Well, sir, there were some last-minute changes to the pricing. We assumed that would be an issue for her." Dander took a step closer, his presence alone shrinking the space between them. "Let me make something clear," he said, his voice quiet but lethal. "Money is not an issue. The problem is that you tried to scam her, then you disrespected her. And now you're standing here acting like you didn't just make the biggest mistake of your life." Heather's smirk finally disappeared. "I want the owner," Dander said. Heather hesitated. "I don't think that's necessary." "I do," Dander said smoothly. "See, you messed with the wrong people today. And I promise you, by the time I'm done, you're going to regret every second of it." For the first time, there was fear in Heather's eyes. Jasmine, watching from the doorway, smiled to herself. This was just the beginning. Heather swallowed hard, her confidence flickering as she tried to maintain her composure. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but there was something different about this man. He wasn't just angry, he was controlled. And that was what scared her the most. The way he stood there, unwavering, completely unimpressed by her usual tactics of intimidation and dismissal, made her palms slick with sweat. The redhead, sensing the shift in power, cleared her throat and tried to interject. "Sir, there's no need for hostility. This is just a misunderstanding." Dander turned his head slightly, pinning her with a look so sharp that the words died in her throat. He didn't even need to raise his voice. His presence alone commanded the room. "I asked for the owner," he repeated, his tone smooth but unrelenting. Heather hesitated, her mind racing for a way out of this situation. She had been working at Lillian's Bridal Emporium for 5 years, and she had never been questioned like this. Usually, people just accepted what she said, especially when she played the policy card. But this man, he wasn't playing by their rules. "The owner isn't available right now," Heather finally said, forcing a smile. "But I'd be happy to handle any concerns you have." Dander exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "Let me ask you something, Heather." His voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was an undeniable weight behind his words. "Do you know who I am?" Heather blinked, caught off guard. She hesitated. "No." Dander's lips curled slightly, but it wasn't a smile. "Good," he said. "That means you have no idea how much trouble you just put yourself in." A nervous chuckle escaped Heather's lips, but it died quickly when Dander pulled his phone out of his pocket and pressed a single button. The line rang twice before a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Mr. Parker." Heather frowned slightly. "Mr. Parker? As in him?" "Yeah," Dander said smoothly, keeping his eyes on Heather as he spoke. I'm standing in front of some very unprofessional employees at Lillian's Bridal Emporium. They just tried to scam my fiancée out of her wedding dress, then kicked her out of the store. Heather's stomach dropped. Silence on the other end of the call. Then, a clipped, serious response. I'll handle it. Diender slipped his phone back into his pocket. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The tension in the air was so thick it was suffocating. Heather's face was pale now, her usual arrogance vanishing completely. "W was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Diender tilted his head slightly. "That." He let out a small chuckle, but there was no humor in it. "That was the owner of this boutique, and in about 5 minutes, he's going to walk through that door and ask why 2 of his employees thought it was a good idea to scam one of his clients." Heather's breath hitched. She glanced at the redhead, who was looking just as panicked now. "Sir, I think we might have misunderstood." Diender held up a single finger, silencing her instantly. "You understood perfectly," he said. "You saw a black woman walk in here, and you assumed she couldn't afford to be here. You thought you could take advantage of her, maybe even push her out quietly. You didn't think she had someone watching her back." Heather opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Jasmine, who had stepped inside the boutique by now, watched with satisfaction. She had never seen Heather look this nervous before. The same woman who had smugly dismissed her minutes ago was now practically trembling under Diender's scrutiny. The redhead, trying to salvage the situation, forced a shaky smile. "Sir, we would be happy to honor the original price of the dress." "Oh, you will," Diender said coolly. "But you won't be the one selling it to her." The door slammed open at that moment, and a tall, silver-haired man in a designer suit stepped inside. His presence alone sent a ripple of shock and fear through Heather and the redhead. Jasmine recognized him immediately from the boutique's website. Louis Harrington, the owner. His icy blue eyes scanned the room before settling on Diender. "Mr. Parker," he greeted, his tone stiff with unease. "I was told there was an issue." Diender didn't turn around. He simply gestured toward Heather and the redhead. "These 2, he said. "Explain to me why they're still standing here." Heather let out a panicked breath. "Mr. Harrington." But the owner wasn't listening. His jaw was tight as he took a step forward, his expression making it clear that he knew exactly what had happened. "I'm so sorry about this, Mr. Parker," Louis said, his voice strained. "This is not how we do business here." He turned his gaze onto Heather and the redhead, his expression deadly calm. "You 2, my office. Now." Heather visibly gulped. "But..." Louis didn't let her finish. "Now." Heather and the redhead exchanged a look before scurrying toward the back room, their entire world crashing down around them. Jasmine took a slow, satisfied breath. Justice had a funny way of showing up when you least expected it. Heather sat stiffly in the plush leather chair across from Louis Harrington's imposing desk, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The office, with its grand mahogany furniture and towering bookshelves, suddenly felt claustrophobic. The air was thick with the weight of impending doom. Beside her, the redhead, Melissa, shifted uncomfortably, stealing a glance at their furious boss. But there was no lifeline to be found. Louis Harrington wasn't just mad, he was livid. The older man leaned forward, folding his hands atop the desk as his piercing blue eyes locked onto Heather. "Explain," he said, his voice eerily calm. Heather swallowed, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "It was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Louis cut her off sharply. "Do you take me for a fool, Heather?" She stiffened, feeling the ground crumbling beneath her. Sir, I was only enforcing policy," she rushed to explain. "We have a strict clientele standard, and I was trying to ensure." Louis let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "A clientele standard?" He leaned back, shaking his head. "Do you mean the same standard that allowed a verified client, a woman who already paid, to be humiliated and thrown out like she was nothing?" Heather's mouth opened, but no words came. Melissa tried to step in. Sir, we thought. No, Lewis interrupted, his voice cutting like steel. You didn't think. That's the problem. He let out a slow breath, his disappointment evident. Do you even realize who you just disrespected? Heather's pulse hammered. A customer, she said weakly. Lewis gave her a look of pure disgust. That customer happens to be the fiancé of Deandra Parker. Heather blinked. The name sounded familiar. Melissa, however, paled instantly. Sir, she whispered, you don't mean the Deandra Parker. Lewis slammed his hand on the desk, making both women jump. Yes, he hissed. The Deandra Parker, the same man who owns Parker and Reed Enterprises, the same man who has millions in investments across this city, including several luxury brands, the same man who could have, should have, been one of our most valuable clients. He exhaled sharply. And thanks to your blatant discrimination and unprofessional behavior, he's now our biggest liability. Heather's stomach twisted painfully. She had messed up. Badly. Sir, she started, trying to salvage whatever dignity she had left. We didn't know who he was. Louis' eyes darkened. And that makes it better. He let out a bitter laugh. Tell me something, Heather. If Jasmine Johnson had been a white woman, would you have suddenly decided to raise the price of her dress? Would you have dismissed her so easily? Heather's mouth went dry. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. Lewis pushed back from his desk, rubbing his temples. I have spent years building this boutique into a name that stands for elegance and exclusivity. We cater to high-end clients. Do you have any idea how much damage this could cause to our reputation? Heather and Melissa sat frozen, the weight of his words crashing over them. Mr. Parker didn't make a scene, Lewis continued. That's the scary part. Do you know what that means? Neither of them answered. It means he doesn't need to, Lewis said darkly. Men like him, they don't yell. They don't cause a scene. They make one phone call to the right person and end you. He exhaled, shaking his head. And that's exactly what I'm expecting to happen now. Heather felt her world caving in. Melissa, now trembling, gripped the arms of her chair. Mr. Harrington, please, we made a mistake, but we can fix it. We can apologize. Lewis let out a low, humorless chuckle. Apologize? He stood up, towering over them. Oh, you'll be apologizing, all right, but not as employees of my boutique. Heather's breath hitched. Sir, you're fired, Lewis said simply. Melissa gasped. Sir, please, we've been loyal to this company. Loyalty means nothing when it's rooted in ignorance, Lewis snapped. You didn't just insult a client. You insulted me. You insulted everything this business is supposed to stand for. Heather gripped the arms of her chair tightly. This isn't fair, she muttered, her voice laced with resentment. Lewis' eyes flashed. Oh, so it's unfair when you're being kicked out. He shook his head in disbelief. Imagine how Jasmine Johnson felt. Silence. Heather lowered her gaze, gripping the hem of her dress so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Lewis straightened his suit jacket, his voice ice-cold. Security will escort you out. You can leave now. Melissa let out a choked sob, but Heather simply clenched her jaw, pushing herself up from the chair. Her pride was shattered, her career in ruins. As they stepped out of the office, they could already see two uniformed security guards waiting by the door. Heather felt the burn of humiliation as they were led past the other employees, people she had once outranked, who were now staring at her with smug satisfaction. The doors swung open, and the two women were ushered outside into the bright afternoon sunlight. Jasmine and Deandra stood by the curb, watching the entire scene unfold. Jasmine crossed her arms. Well, would you look at that? She mused, a small smile playing on her lips. I guess justice has a way of working itself out. Heather glared at her, her fists trembling at her sides. But she knew better than to say anything. Deandra, on the other hand, simply raised an eyebrow at her. No words now? He asked, tilting his head. Shame. You had plenty to say when you were throwing my fiancé out of the store. Heather turned away, her face burning with anger and shame. Jasmine, however, wasn't done. She took a slow step forward, looking Heather dead in the eyes. Next time you decide to judge someone based on how they look, she said softly, remember this moment. With that, she turned and slid her hand into Dander's, squeezing it gently. Heather and Melissa stormed off, their careers shattered, their dignity in tatters. Meanwhile, Dander kissed Jasmine's forehead and smiled down at her. Now, he said, how about we get you that dress? Jasmine grinned, watching as Louis himself walked toward them, ready to personally correct the mistake his employees had made. Because today, she had won. Jasmine stood in front of the full-length mirror in a private fitting room, her reflection staring back at her. The gown she had fallen in love with shimmered under the soft lighting, the intricate lace detailing hugging her figure perfectly. It was breathtaking. It was hers. Yet, the sting of what had happened earlier still lingered. The humiliation, the audacity of those women treating her like she wasn't worthy of standing in that boutique. It wasn't something she could easily shake off. Dander must have sensed it because, as he leaned against the plush velvet couch behind her, he spoke in that steady, reassuring voice of his. Babe, don't let them steal this moment from you. She turned slightly, meeting his gaze through the mirror. I know, she murmured. It's just. She exhaled slowly. I don't get it. It's 2025. You'd think we'd be past this by now. Dander scoffed, pushing off the couch and stepping toward her. His arms wrapped around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Some people will always think they can decide who belongs where. But you. His lips brushed against her temple. You belong anywhere you damn well please. Jasmine sighed, leaning into him. The warmth of his embrace helped soothe the raw edges of her emotions, but deep inside, she knew that this was about more than just her. She turned in his arms, pressing her forehead against his chest. It's not just about me, Dre. It's about the next black woman who walks into this store, hoping to feel special, only to be treated like she doesn't deserve to be here. Dander's jaw clenched. That's why I made sure those women won't be working here again. Jasmine pulled back slightly, her eyes narrowing. Speaking of that, how did you pull that off so fast? A small smirk tugged at the corner of Dander's lips. Let's just say that Louis Harrington was very motivated to fix his mistake. Jasmine folded her arms. Dre. He exhaled, his smirk fading into something more serious. I made a call. You know my company has investments in luxury retail, right? Jasmine nodded. Well, Eleanor's bridal boutique was looking to expand, and they were trying to secure funding from one of my associates. The very important associate. When I explained what happened, let's just say, they weren't too keen on investing in a business that allows discrimination to happen under its roof. Jasmine's brows lifted. Wait. Are you telling me you just cost them millions? Dander shrugged. Actions have consequences. A stunned laugh escaped her lips. Baby, you're ruthless. He kissed her forehead again. Only when I need to be. A knock at the fitting room door interrupted them. And a moment later, Louis himself stepped inside. His usual air of intimidating authority was gone, replaced by something far humbler. He clasped his hands together, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Johnson, he said, nodding toward her. Mr. Parker. Dander gave him a slow, assessing look. Louis. Jasmine turned fully toward him, lifting her chin. I assume you have something to say. Louis nodded. First, let me say that I am deeply sorry for the way you were treated. It was completely unacceptable, and I take full responsibility. Jasmine arched a brow. Oh, because from where I stood, it seemed like your employees were pretty comfortable treating people like that. Makes me wonder if this is the first time it's happened, or just the first time someone with power called you out on it. Louis paled slightly. I won't deny that there have been. shortcomings in our customer service policies, but I assure you, steps are being taken to correct them. Effective immediately, we will be implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff. Additionally, I'll be revising our hiring policies to ensure that we are truly fostering an environment of equality. Jasmine didn't blink, and the two women who disrespected me. They've been terminated, Lewis said without hesitation. They will never work in this establishment again. Jasmine glanced at Dinder, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. She turned back to Lewis. Good. That's a start. Lewis shifted awkwardly. I'd also like to offer you a personal shopping experience on the house. Any gown you choose, including this one, will be complimentary. Jasmine let out a soft laugh. Now, Mr. Harrington, do I look like someone who needs a free dress? Lewis' face turned a deeper shade of red. I didn't mean to imply. Dinder chuckled. She's messing with you, man. Jasmine smirked. But I do appreciate the gesture. She ran her fingers along the fabric of the dress she was wearing. I've already picked my gown, and I'll be paying for it. Lewis looked almost relieved. Of course, he said quickly. I just hope you'll consider allowing us to regain your trust. Jasmine tilted her head, considering him. I'll think about it, she said at last. But trust isn't something you just ask for. You have to earn it. Lewis nodded, his expression tight. Understood. With that, he turned and left the room. Jasmine turned back to Dinder, who was watching her with open admiration. You're amazing, you know that, he murmured. She grinned. I know. Dinder chuckled, shaking his head. Come on, let's get out of here. We've got a wedding to plan. Jasmine glanced at her reflection one last time, taking in the sight of herself in the gown she had always dreamed of wearing. She had come into this boutique expecting magic. Instead, she had faced humiliation. But now she was walking out victorious. Because real magic, it wasn't in the dress. It was in knowing her worth and making sure the world knew it, too. As Jasmine stepped out of the bridal boutique, the cool evening air kissed her skin, carrying away the last traces of tension from the storm she had just weathered. Dinder walked beside her, his fingers laced with hers, a quiet strength radiating from his presence. The moment should have felt victorious, because it was, but deep inside, something still lingered unsettled. She paused on the sidewalk, turning to face the grand display window of the boutique. The pristine white mannequins stood frozen in their poses, draped in luxury, untouched by the reality of what had just happened within those walls. How many other black women had stood in her shoes before? How many had been turned away, their dignity chipped at, simply because of the color of their skin? Dinder, as if sensing her thoughts, squeezed her hand gently. You good? He asked. Jasmine let out a slow breath, nodding. Yeah. I just keep thinking. What if I hadn't spoken up? What if you hadn't been there? Would they have gotten away with it? Dinder's jaw tensed. Probably. She hated that answer, but she knew it was the truth. Jasmine turned away from the boutique and looked at Dinder, her eyes searching his. I don't want this to just be my victory, Dre. I want it to mean something. His lips curled into a small, knowing smile. I had a feeling you'd say that. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and handed it to her. Take a look. Jasmine arched a brow before glancing down at the screen. What she saw made her heart race. It was a news article. The headline read, Luxury Bridal Boutique Faces Backlash After Discriminating Against Black Customer. Her breath caught. Scrolling further, she saw video footage, captured by other customers who had been in the store, of her confrontation with the boutique staff. The audacity, the cruelty, the moment they had tried to force her out. It had all been caught on camera. She looked up at Dinder, stunned. How did this get out so fast? He smirked. People don't stay silent anymore, baby. Someone filmed it, posted it online. And, well, it spread like wildfire. Jasmine's fingers tightened around his phone as she skimmed through the article. The comments were flooded with support. Women, black women especially, were sharing their own stories of discrimination in high-end stores, in spaces where they were made to feel like they didn't belong. It wasn't just about her anymore. Jasmine inhaled deeply. Good. Diender studied her. What are you thinking? She handed the phone back to him, her eyes fierce with determination. I'm thinking I don't want to just walk away from this. I want to do something that actually changes things. Diender gave her a slow, approving nod. Tell me what you need. Jasmine's mind was already racing. I want to create something. A space where black women don't have to fight for the respect they deserve when shopping for their dream dresses. A boutique that actually values them. Diender's grin widened. A boutique. She nodded firmly. Yeah, a bridal boutique. Our boutique. There was a beat of silence before Diender burst out laughing, shaking his head in admiration. Damn, baby, you don't play. Jasmine smirked. When have you ever known me to back down? His laughter faded, replaced by something deeper, something proud. Never. She reached for his hand again. So, what do you think? Diender tilted his head, pretending to consider. I think, if I wasn't already engaged to you, I'd propose all over again just for this. Jasmine chuckled, but her excitement was real. She could see it. A boutique that welcomed all brides, but especially the ones who had been shut out for too long. And with Diender's business expertise, it wasn't just a dream. It was possible. Jasmine turned back to the boutique one last time, letting the weight of the past few hours settle. She had been humiliated. She had been tested. But she had also walked away with her dignity intact and a plan that would shake things up for the better. With one last glance at the store window, she whispered under her breath, "Watch me." Then, with Diender by her side, she walked away, not as a woman who had just been wronged, but as a woman ready to change the game forever.